The rescue.
Спасение.
The rescue. The cowardly lion was much pleased.
Трусливый лев очень обрадовался.
The cowardly lion was much pleased. To hear that the wicked witch had been melted.
Услышав, что злая ведьма растаяла.
To hear that the wicked witch had been melted. By a bucket of water.
Под ведром воды.
By a bucket of water. And Dorothy at once unlocked the gate of his prison.
И Дороти тотчас же отперла ворота темницы.
And Dorothy at once unlocked the gate of his prison. And set him free.
И освободила его.
And set him free. They went in together to the castle.
Они вместе вошли в замок.
They went in together to the castle. Where Dorothy's first act was to call all the Winkies together.
Где Дороти первым делом собрала всех мигунов.
Where Dorothy's first act was to call all the Winkies together. And tell them that they were no longer slaves.
И сказала им, что они больше не рабы.
And tell them that they were no longer slaves. There was great rejoicing among the yellow Winkies.
Среди желтых мигунов было большое ликование.
There was great rejoicing among the yellow Winkies. For they had been made to work hard during many years.
Потому что они были вынуждены много лет тяжело работать.
For they had been made to work hard during many years. For the wicked witch.
На злую ведьму.
For the wicked witch. Who had always treated them with great cruelty.
Которая всегда обращалась с ними с большой жестокостью.
Who had always treated them with great cruelty. They kept this day as a holiday.
Они считали этот день праздником.
They kept this day as a holiday. Then and ever after.
Тогда и всегда.
Then and ever after. And spent the time in feasting and dancing.
И проводили время в пиршествах и танцах.
And spent the time in feasting and dancing. If our friends, the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman.
Если бы наши друзья, Страшила и Железный Дровосек.
If our friends, the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman. Were only with us.
Были бы только с нами.
Were only with us. Said the lion.
Сказал лев.
Said the lion. I should be quite happy.
Я был бы очень счастлив.
I should be quite happy. Don't you suppose we could rescue them?
Ты не думаешь, что мы могли бы их спасти?
Don't you suppose we could rescue them? Asked the girl anxiously.
С тревогой спросила девушка.
Asked the girl anxiously. We can try.
Мы можем попробовать.
We can try. Answered the lion.
Ответил лев.
Answered the lion. So they called the yellow Winkies and asked them.
Итак, они позвали желтых мигунов и спросили их.
So they called the yellow Winkies and asked them. If they would help to rescue their friends.
Не помогут ли они спасти их друзей?
If they would help to rescue their friends. And the Winkies said.
И мигуны сказали.
And the Winkies said. That they would be delighted to do all in their power.
Что будут рады сделать все, что в их силах.
That they would be delighted to do all in their power. For Dorothy, who had set them free from bondage.
Для Дороти, которая освободила их из рабства.
For Dorothy, who had set them free from bondage. So she chose a number of the Winkies.
Поэтому она выбрала несколько мигунов.
So she chose a number of the Winkies. Who looked as if they knew the most.
Которые выглядели так, словно знали больше всех.
Who looked as if they knew the most. And they all started away.
И все отправились прочь.
And they all started away. They traveled that day and part of the next.
Они шли день и часть следующего.
They traveled that day and part of the next. Until they came to the rocky plain.
Пока не пришли к каменистой равнине.
Until they came to the rocky plain. Where the Tin Woodman lay, all battered and bent.
Где лежал железный дровосек, весь потрепанный и погнутый.
Where the Tin Woodman lay, all battered and bent. His axe was near him.
Его топор был рядом с ним.
His axe was near him. But the blade was rusted and the handle broken off short.
Но лезвие было ржавым, а рукоять коротко обломанной.
But the blade was rusted and the handle broken off short. The Winkies lifted him tenderly in their arms.
Мигуны нежно подхватили его на руки.
The Winkies lifted him tenderly in their arms. And carried him back to the yellow castle again.
И отнесли обратно в желтый замок.
And carried him back to the yellow castle again. Dorothy shedding a few tears by the way.
Дороти по пути пролила несколько слез.
Dorothy shedding a few tears by the way. At the sad plight of her old friend.
Из-за печального положения своего старого друга.
At the sad plight of her old friend. And the lion looking sober and sorry.
А лев выглядел рассудительным и сожалеющим.
And the lion looking sober and sorry. When they reached the castle, Dorothy said to the Winkies.
Когда они добрались до замка, Дороти сказала мигунам.
When they reached the castle, Dorothy said to the Winkies. Are any of your people tinsmiths?
Кто-нибудь есть жестянщики?
Are any of your people tinsmiths? Oh, yes. Some of us are very good tinsmiths.
Да, некоторые из нас очень хорошие жестянщики.
Oh, yes. Some of us are very good tinsmiths. They told her.
Сказали они ей.
They told her. Then bring them to me.
Тогда пришлите их мне.
Then bring them to me. She said.
Сказала она.
She said. And when the tinsmiths came.
И когда явились жестянщики.
And when the tinsmiths came. Bringing with them all their tools in baskets.
Со всеми своими инструментами в корзинах.
Bringing with them all their tools in baskets. She inquired.
Она спросила.
She inquired. Can you straighten out those dents in the Tin Woodman?
Можете ли вы выправить вмятины на железном дровосеке?
Can you straighten out those dents in the Tin Woodman? And bend him back into shape again.
Снова вернуть ему форму.
And bend him back into shape again. And solder him together where he is broken?
И припаять его там, где он сломан.
And solder him together where he is broken? The tinsmiths looked the woodman over carefully.
Жестянщики внимательно осмотрели дровосека.
The tinsmiths looked the woodman over carefully. And then answered that they thought.
И затем ответили, что, по их мнению,
And then answered that they thought. They could mend him so he would be as good as ever.
они могут починить его так же хорошо, как и прежде.
They could mend him so he would be as good as ever. So they set to work.
Итак, они приступили к работе.
So they set to work. In one of the big yellow rooms of the castle.
В одной из больших желтых комнат замка.
In one of the big yellow rooms of the castle. And worked for 3 days and 4 nights.
И трудились 3 дня и 4 ночи.
And worked for 3 days and 4 nights. Hammering and twisting and bending and soldering.
Забивая, скручивая, сгибая, паяя.
Hammering and twisting and bending and soldering. And polishing and pounding at the legs.
Полируя и колотя по ногам.
And polishing and pounding at the legs. And body and head of the Tin Woodman.
Телу и голове железного дровосека.
And body and head of the Tin Woodman. Until at last he was straightened out into his old form.
Пока, наконец, он не выпрямился в своей прежней форме.
Until at last he was straightened out into his old form. And his joints worked as well as ever.
И его суставы заработали так же хорошо, как и прежде.
And his joints worked as well as ever. To be sure, there were several patches on him.
Правда, на нем было несколько заплат.
To be sure, there were several patches on him. But the tinsmiths did a good job.
Но жестянщики хорошо поработали.
But the tinsmiths did a good job. And as the woodman was not a vain man.
А так как дровосек не был тщеславным человеком.
And as the woodman was not a vain man. He did not mind the patches at all.
То он совсем не возражал против заплат.
He did not mind the patches at all. When, at last, he walked into Dorothy's room.
Когда, наконец, он вошел в комнату Дороти.
When, at last, he walked into Dorothy's room. And thanked her for rescuing him.
И поблагодарил ее за спасение.
And thanked her for rescuing him. He was so pleased that he wept tears of joy.
Он был так доволен, что заплакал от радости.
He was so pleased that he wept tears of joy. And Dorothy had to wipe every tear carefully.
И Дороти пришлось тщательно вытирать каждую слезу.
And Dorothy had to wipe every tear carefully. From his face with her apron.
С его лица своим фартуком.
From his face with her apron. So his joints would not be rusted.
чтобы его суставы не заржавели.
so his joints would not be rusted. At the same time her own tears.
В то же время ее собственные слезы
At the same time her own tears. Fell thick and fast at the joy.
текли густыми и быстрыми потоками от радости.
Fell thick and fast at the joy. Of meeting her old friend again.
Новой встречи со своим старым другом.
Of meeting her old friend again. And these tears did not need to be wiped away.
И эти слезы не нужно было вытирать.
And these tears did not need to be wiped away. As for the lion.
Что касается льва,
As for the lion. He wiped his eyes so often with the tip of his tail.
то он так часто вытирал глаза кончиком хвоста,
He wiped his eyes so often with the tip of his tail. That it became quite wet.
что тот стал совсем мокрым.
That it became quite wet. And he was obliged to go out into the courtyard.
И ему пришлось выйти во двор.
And he was obliged to go out into the courtyard. And hold it in the sun till it dried.
И подержать его на солнце, пока он не высохнет.
And hold it in the sun till it dried. If we only had the scarecrow with us again.
Если бы с нами снова был страшила.
If we only had the scarecrow with us again. Said the Tin Woodman.
Сказал железный дровосек.
Said the Tin Woodman. When Dorothy had finished telling him everything that had happened.
Когда Дороти закончила рассказывать ему обо всем, что произошло.
When Dorothy had finished telling him everything that had happened. I should be quite happy.
Я был бы очень счастлив.
I should be quite happy. We must try to find him.
Мы должны попытаться найти его.
We must try to find him. Said the girl.
Сказала девушка.
Said the girl. So she called the Winkies to help her.
Поэтому она позвала мигунов на помощь.
So she called the Winkies to help her. And they walked all that day and part of the next.
И они шли весь день и часть следующего.
And they walked all that day and part of the next. Until they came to the tall tree.
Пока не подошли к высокому дереву.
Until they came to the tall tree. In the branches of which the winged monkeys.
В ветви которого крылатые обезьяны.
In the branches of which the winged monkeys. Had tossed the scarecrow's clothes.
Бросили одежду страшилы.
Had tossed the scarecrow's clothes. It was a very tall tree.
Это было очень высокое дерево.
It was a very tall tree. And the trunk was so smooth.
И ствол был таким гладким.
And the trunk was so smooth. That no one could climb it.
Что никто не мог на него взобраться.
That no one could climb it. But the woodman said at once.
Но дровосек тотчас же сказал.
But the woodman said at once. I'll chop it down.
Я срублю его.
I'll chop it down. And then we can get the scarecrow's clothes.
И тогда мы сможем достать одежду страшилы.
And then we can get the scarecrow's clothes. Now while the tinsmiths had been at work mending the woodman himself.
Пока жестянщики чинили самого дровосека.
Now while the tinsmiths had been at work mending the woodman himself. Another of the Winkies, who was a goldsmith.
Один из мигунов, ювелир.
Another of the Winkies, who was a goldsmith. Had made an axe handle of solid gold.
Изготовил из чистого золота рукоять топора.
Had made an axe handle of solid gold. And fitted it to the woodman's axe.
И приладил ее к топору дровосека.
And fitted it to the woodman's axe. Instead of the old broken handle.
Вместо старой сломанной рукоятки.
Instead of the old broken handle. Others polished the blade.
Другие полировали лезвие.
Others polished the blade. Until all the rust was removed.
До тех пор, пока вся ржавчина не была удалена.
Until all the rust was removed. And it glistened like burnished silver.
И оно заблестело, как полированное серебро.
And it glistened like burnished silver. As soon as he had spoken.
Как только он сказал это.
As soon as he had spoken. The Tin Woodman began to chop.
Железный дровосек начал рубить.
The Tin Woodman began to chop. And in a short time the tree fell over with a crash.
И вскоре дерево с грохотом упало.
And in a short time the tree fell over with a crash. Whereupon the scarecrow's clothes fell out.
После чего одежда страшилы свалилась.
Whereupon the scarecrow's clothes fell out of the branches and rolled off on the ground.
С ветвей и покатилась по земле.
Of the branches and rolled off on the ground. Dorothy picked them up.
Дороти подобрала их.
Dorothy picked them up. And had the Winkies carry them back to the castle.
И велела мигунам отнести обратно в замок.
And had the Winkies carry them back to the castle. Where they were stuffed with nice, clean straw.
Где они были набиты красивой чистой соломой.
Where they were stuffed with nice, clean straw. And behold.
И вот.
And behold. Here was the scarecrow, as good as ever.
Вот и страшила, в порядке как прежде.
Here was the scarecrow, as good as ever. Thanking them over and over again for saving him.
Снова и снова благодарит их за спасение.
Thanking them over and over again for saving him. Now that they were reunited.
Теперь, когда они воссоединились.
Now that they were reunited. Dorothy and her friends.
Дороти и ее друзья.
Dorothy and her friends. Spent a few happy days at the Yellow Castle.
Провели несколько счастливых дней в желтом замке.
Spent a few happy days at the Yellow Castle. Where they found everything they needed.
Где нашли все необходимое.
Where they found everything they needed. To make them comfortable.
Для комфортного проживания.
To make them comfortable. But one day the girl thought of Aunt Em, and said.
Но однажды девочка подумала о тете Эм и сказала.
But one day the girl thought of Aunt Em, and said. We must go back to Oz.
Мы должны вернуться в страну Оз.
We must go back to Oz. And claim his promise.
И получить обещанное.
And claim his promise. Yes, said the woodman.
Да, сказал дровосек.
Yes, said the woodman. At last I shall get my heart.
Наконец-то я получу свое сердце.
At last I shall get my heart. And I shall get my brains.
А я получу мозги.
And I shall get my brains. Added the scarecrow joyfully.
Радостно добавил страшила.
Added the scarecrow joyfully. And I shall get my courage.
А я наберусь смелости.
And I shall get my courage. Said the lion thoughtfully.
Задумчиво сказал лев.
Said the lion thoughtfully. And I shall get back to Kansas.
И я вернусь в Канзас.
And I shall get back to Kansas. Cried Dorothy, clapping her hands.
Воскликнула Дороти, хлопая в ладоши.
Cried Dorothy, clapping her hands. Oh, let us start for the Emerald City tomorrow.
Давайте завтра отправимся в изумрудный город.
Oh, let us start for the Emerald City tomorrow. This they decided to do.
Это они решили сделать.
This they decided to do. The next day they called the Winkies together.
На следующий день они собрали мигунов.
The next day they called the Winkies together. And bade them goodbye.
И попрощались с ними.
And bade them goodbye. The Winkies were sorry to have them go.
Мигунам было жаль, что они уходят.
The Winkies were sorry to have them go. And they had grown so fond of the Tin Woodman.
И они так полюбили железного дровосека.
And they had grown so fond of the Tin Woodman. That they begged him to stay.
Что умоляли его остаться.
That they begged him to stay. And rule over them and the yellow land of the West.
И править ими и желтой землей Запада.
And rule over them and the yellow land of the West. Finding they were determined to go.
Обнаружив, что они полны решимости уйти.
Finding they were determined to go. The Winkies gave Toto and the lion each a golden collar.
Мигуны дали Татошке и льву по золотому ошейнику.
The Winkies gave Toto and the lion each a golden collar. And to Dorothy they presented a beautiful bracelet.
А Дороти подарили прекрасный браслет.
And to Dorothy they presented a beautiful bracelet. Studded with diamonds.
Усыпанный бриллиантами.
Studded with diamonds. And to the scarecrow they gave a gold-headed walking stick.
А страшиле дали трость с золотым набалдашником.
And to the scarecrow they gave a gold-headed walking stick. To keep him from stumbling.
Чтобы он не спотыкался.
To keep him from stumbling. And to the Tin Woodman they offered a silver oil can.
А железному дровосеку они предложили серебряную масленку.
And to the Tin Woodman they offered a silver oil can. Inlaid with gold.
инкрустированную золотом,
Inlaid with gold. And set with precious jewels.
и украшенную драгоценными камнями.
And set with precious jewels. Every one of the travelers made the winkies.
Каждый из путешественников произнес для мигунов.
Every one of the travelers made the winkies. A pretty speech in return.
В ответ милую речь.
A pretty speech in return. And all shook hands with them until their arms ached.
И все пожали им руку, пока у них не заболели руки.
And all shook hands with them until their arms ached. Dorothy went to the witch's cupboard.
Дороти подошла к шкафу ведьмы.
Dorothy went to the witch's cupboard. To fill her basket with food for the journey.
Чтобы наполнить свою корзину продуктами для путешествия.
To fill her basket with food for the journey. And there she saw the golden cap.
И увидела там золотую шапку.
And there she saw the golden cap. She tried it on her own head.
Она попробовала его на своей голове.
She tried it on her own head. And found that it fitted her exactly.
И обнаружила, что он точно ей подходит.
And found that it fitted her exactly. She did not know anything about the charm of the golden cap.
Она ничего не знала о магии золотой шапки.
She did not know anything about the charm of the golden cap. But she saw that it was pretty.
Но увидела, что она хороша.
But she saw that it was pretty. So she made up her mind to wear it.
И решила надеть ее.
So she made up her mind to wear it. And carry her sunbonnet in the basket.
А шляпу от солнца носить в корзине.
And carry her sunbonnet in the basket. Then, being prepared for the journey.
Затем, приготовившись к путешествию.
Then, being prepared for the journey. They all started for the Emerald City.
Все отправились в изумрудный город.
They all started for the Emerald City. And the Winkies gave them 3 cheers.
И мигуны трижды приветствовали их.
And the Winkies gave them 3 cheers. And many good wishes to carry with them.
И увезли с собой множество добрых пожеланий.
And many good wishes to carry with them.